to the top-ranked podcast, the SimplyBe podcast. Jessica is highly acclaimed for her accomplishments, including being named a notable entrepreneur by Crain's Chicago Business, a top digital marketer to watch by Inc., and a personal branding expert by Forbes. She has also won the Gold and Silver Stevie Awards for Female Entrepreneur of the Year, and has been featured in various publications, including MarketWatch, Business Insider, and HuffPost. And as a dynamic speaker, Zweig has presented on national and international stages and facilitated personal branding workshops for corporations such as Heineken USA, Nike, Bank of America, and many more. Through her company, SimplyBe, she and her team have gained national reputation for enhancing the personal brands of corporate teams, executives, and entrepreneurs. Please join me in welcoming Jessica.
Jessica, welcome, welcome, welcome. And as stated previously, we are going to be switching up the format a little bit today. So Jessica, it is really all about you, but we're going to be doing a bit of an interview today. So first off, tell us, what has your experience been like developing personal brands?
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having me. I love dropping in with groups of people that are all on a mission and ambitious and driven to know more incredible people and to improve their own careers and grow and never stop learning. And so thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor. What do I know about personal brands and how why I've made this my entire career is purely based on my own personal success and complete pivot point in my career when I realized the power of my own brand and what I saw happen and how I became so enthralled and frankly obsessed with this asset called us, called our names, called our reputations, and what can happen when we become intentional, when we become clear and consistent and strategic, and most of all of service. That to me is the heart of what makes a strong personal brand. And just to give you a quick kind of backstory on what that moment was like for me. Before I ran my agency, SimplyBe, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've been running this business for about 7 years. Before this business, for another 7 years, I just realized that's like maybe a magic number. I was running a magazine, an online digital platform for women in the city of Chicago for the duration of my late 20s and early 30s. And we were the sort of it platform, and we covered restaurants and nightlife and fashion and fitness. We were just this really cool, robust digital platform. And I decided to walk away from it when I was 33. I couldn't do it anymore. Maybe some of you have had business partners you couldn't really see eye to eye with. It had run its course. I was burnt out. I didn't really feel an alignment, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew I had learned a few things about marketing and branding running this magazine. It's also important to know that at this point in my life, I was broke. We had really struggled with that business, and it was a critical success on the outside, but financially it was a mess. And I decided to just place all the chips on me and leave and start my own little baby one-woman consultancy called SimplyBe, named after the little tattoo here on my wrist. And I had no strategy. I had no website. I had no product. I just had my name, and I knew that I could help people with what I knew. And that was called AKA consulting. And so I launched this little baby business called SimplyBe, which was just Jessica Zweig at the time, by sending out an email to my network. I BCC'd about 100 people, told them I was leaving the magazine to go off and do this new thing. And I put up a Facebook post. And within 1 week, this is a true story, in 5 business days, I had over $25,000 worth of client retainer work and like a line out the door of people wanting to work with me. And I hadn't even architected a strategy or a brand or anything. It was the reputation that I had accrued over the previous 7 years as face and founder of this business, that people trusted me. They didn't even know what I did. They just knew I could help them with marketing and branding consulting. And that was really an aha. That was the pivot point for me. I was like, wow, I didn't even mean to do this. Like, this is an asset called my brand. And I'm not going to be running this magazine or even this agency forever, but I'll always be me. And so what if I got really clear on that as an asset and invested in it and leveraged it in a way that was not about, if I'm being honest, when I was running that magazine, it was all about see and be seen versus what can I serve and how can I help, frankly. And that was my own personal growth journey that I had to go through. And I realized that the sauce is all about value. And we as people can create value and impact in a way that brands and companies and logos and corporations can't. We do business with people. We are all human beings at the end of the day, and that's powerful. And so when we come to the internet with that in mind, we can cut through and pierce through and not only help people, most importantly, but drive success for ourselves in a completely different way. And so it really became an obsession. And within 18 months, I had scaled the agency to 7 figures. I went from one woman shop to now 25 full-time employees in less than 6 years. We serve clients across the globe, Fortune 500 executives, all the way down to tech-funded, highly funded tech companies and everything in between. And really learned so much about this space of what personal branding can do for pretty much anyone. And then, yes, I wrote a book, as Shannon said, because I feel like this should not be reserved to those that can just work with an agency. I wanted everyone to have this in their hands. And so, Dan, I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but I have a lot to say
great.
about.
And it's actually a very impressive story. So you come out of print, as many of us actually have. I rolled with the punches, and then eventually I'd hate to say it, but it's kind of reached obsolescence at this point. All right. And you just right out of the bat had, what'd you say, 25K worth of devotees willing to just follow you off a cliff, potentially. That is a testament to personal branding, but also reputation. And I wanted to ask you, there is an overlap between reputation and a personal brand, obviously, but what would you say, and I hate to throw this curveball at you, what would you say is the difference between reputation and a personal brand?
I love this question. And no one's ever asked me that specifically, but I get the people want to know about the nuances of this space in relation to their careers, and how they're seen in the market and like who they really are and how vulnerable and authentic they can really be. And in my view, they're one and the same. Your personal brand is your business card. It is your credit score. It is your reputation. It is what people say about you when you are not in the room. If you want to know what your personal brand is, ask yourself that question. What do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? And that right there in that space is your personal brand and therefore your reputation. And so what's so exciting for me about this work and why I have dedicated truly my life to it is that it's not just about branding, although that's sort of the net effect, having a clear articulated value, amplify it into the market. Great, huge. But it's personal empowerment at its core, because you get to write your own narrative based on becoming aligned and embodied and conscious with who you want to be and how you want people to talk about you. You get to write that. You, of course, have to own it and be consistent and authentic in the way you show up. But you get to write the narrative based on choices, based on how you treat people, based on what you share on the internet, based on what you speak when you're out in the real world in conversations. That's all your brand. And you are empowered to take control of that. And that can be game changing, not just in business, but in life too.
Right on. And so, trying to phrase the question here. So, when it comes to aptitudes and actually engaging, with your potential clients or the audience that you wish to address, how do you go about kind of identifying what those aptitudes are? And how to put that best foot forward when it comes to an individual client?
Great question. So when I first started the agency, I was, super amped clearly on the power of personal branding. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to start a business and help people with this. And unlike a water bottle or a computer or a car, people are complicated. We are not meant to be defined nor understood in less than 15 seconds. But if you want to architect a brand that cuts through the very noisy, saturated market that we all live in right now and capture attention, you have to be clear. You have to be crystal clear. You have to be razor sharp. And so what I've done, and I hope you can see my book, I've created a handful of methodologies. So the first one is called the personal brand hologram. So all of these, we have about 6 tools that are all trademarked. And the first and most foundational one is the hologram. And this is really what I would call the blueprint to your platform, right? The platform called your name. And we have to identify What are the core tenets? What is our value proposition? How do we tell our story? How do we achieve depth and authenticity while also brand clarity at the same time? And so what I would do is ask yourselves, for those of you that are on the call, a couple things. I'll kind of give you a crash course on this hologram exercise. When people hear your name, when your name comes up in a room, all right, what's the feeling or the word or the thought or the sentence that you think they're thinking or feeling or saying? And maybe you don't know it, but what would you then want it to be? Because your brand, just like any brand, should feel aspirational to you. And that's great. So that's kind of where we start with that. Like we call it the headline, the tagline, the slogan, essentially, to pierce through the noise and make people know what's synonymous with you. And then those 4 boxes in that framework are called your brand pillars. And you can't talk about everything you want to talk about today and expect to be seen as an expert. You have to really know your lanes and stick to your own script. And so we help our clients define what are those 4 brand pillars. So if you were to come up with them yourselves, I would ask you all, if I were to say to you, you can only talk about 4 things between today and the rest of your life, what would those 4 things be? Ideally, yeah, it's a tough question. People are like, only 4, maybe start with 8 or 6 or 10, and then whittle it down to your top 4. But 4 would be ideally the things that you know the most about, like your depth of your expertise, what you've dedicated your career to, what you're an expert in, why people pay you money, where you went to school, all the things, but also what lights you up, what lights your soul on fire, what are you the most passionate about, what could you talk about endlessly? Because when we're passionate and we're joyful about the things we're sharing, we become magnetic, right? And that's where that authenticity piece comes in. So it should be a blend, ideally, of the professional and personal aspects of your story.
Yeah, but people should definitely be aligned with what makes them happy. They'll be able to showcase their personal brand so much better. Completely. Rather than if you're dragging your feet through life, So yeah, 1000%. What was I going to ask? So, oh my God, it was on the tip of my tongue. All right, we'll tell you what, let's get back on script here. All right. So, how do you actually, when you're engaging with the client, how do you measure their success? I mean, it's kind of an ambiguous space that you're working in here. Is it client happiness? Is it, some kind of metric that you're monitoring? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, with all of our clients, we have to co-create with them what success looks like, because every client is different. So certain clients come in and they're at a pivot point where they're looking to sell their business, and we need to elevate the CEO as a thought leader in the industry. Another client might come in and they're doing a big fundraise and they need to recruit talent fast. And so we have to elevate key executives to demonstrate culture and what it's like to work there. Other clients are looking to grow, their podcast and want to use their podcast to grow their platform and network with strategic relationships and, build clouds. So it really just does depend. We have an amazing client. She's the CEO of a multi-million-dollar food company. And we launched a podcast for her, and she's used the podcast as a networking tool to interface with other food industry executives, Starbucks, PepsiCo, Egg Life. We've gotten all of these executives on her podcast that they've used as a B2B tool to create real authentic relationships. Meanwhile, we're also branding all of her executives, about 9 of them, that can all show up on LinkedIn and really demonstrate the thought leadership, innovation, technology, and that's coming out of this organization. And so it really just does depend. Every client has a different goal. And I often say a strategy isn't a strategy unless it has objectives, milestones, and KPIs. So we really co-create that with our clients to build a roadmap for them that keeps us accountable to them as their partner, as much as them accountable to showing up for this work, because it really is a partnership.
So what kind of people have you actually worked with? Because I mean, it's, I hear a lot of corporate talk going on here. Have you dealt with anything kind of more alternative, maybe a bit edgier?
Oh yeah. We've served like 500 plus clients in the agency. And so, some of them, I mean, we work with we've had a couple of Fortune 500 executives, which are amazing. We work with tech CEOs. We work with, we're working with a client now that's like in defense software, but we've worked with comedians. We've worked with artists. We've worked with chefs. We've worked with all sorts of like teachers in the spiritual space, so people who, I think that everybody has a personal brand. I don't just say that because, hi, I'm biased, but I believe that everybody has a reason for being here, and has a worthy message, because no one is you. No one in the world is you. It has your own unique DNA. So I have pretty much two criteria when you become a client. The first is you really have to be here for a bigger why than just your own ego. A lot of people think of personal branding and think of like image and likes and Insta fame. That's not SimplyBe. Like, don't come to us if that's what you're interested in. We'll help you grow on all of those channels, but that's not our primary aim. You have to actually give an ish about the world. Like, to me, that's number one. And I can really suss that out right away. And you have to just be willing to show up, because this isn't something that you can kind of like dip your toe in and when you feel like it and expect to make an impact. You really have to stay consistent to your own platform, to your own audience at the end of the day. And that doesn't need to be a huge audience. It can be just your unique community. It can be your company. It can be your own culture. That to me are the through lines that we look for in all of our clients.
So how would you say that you've challenged some people to actually step up and show up and see if they're serious about this idea of developing their personal brand?
Well, I've turned down clients and I've let go of clients, frankly, for those reasons. I want everyone to win, but again, if we're not aligned on values, I actually tell the story about a particular client in the beginning of my book. She was like a financial advisor wanting to be the next Susie Orman. And she came to me and she had deep pockets. She was willing to throw down and was going to be one of my biggest clients I'd ever gotten at the time. And she didn't say one thing in that meeting about like how she wanted to truly help her clients. All she talked about was how many YouTube followers and email subscribers and Facebook likes she wanted. Literally, that was like her center of focus. And
just purely in it for the clicks, for the views.
For herself. Yeah.
I get that. And you see it a lot. Some people absolutely just making mistakes, just to get some of that clout. So and they really don't care what the brand is as long as they get the view, It's very interesting how people operate. Certain people. All right, but enough of that. So let's see here. Can you give me an example of a personal branding campaign that you've worked on and what the outcomes were? Maybe a specific case study?
Sure. Yeah.
A favorite, perhaps?
I always refer to my friend Larry. Larry's the best story because he's the CEO and founder of a rail tech company. And, his CMO at the time brought SimplyBe into the strategy. She was hired to do kind of this global communication strategy. And part of her strategy was elevating him and elevating the thought leadership of the company. And he was like, I don't care about social media. I don't want to be seen. This doesn't matter to me. Who are these girls who wear a lot of yellow? Because we're really into yellow at SimplyBe, if you couldn't tell. Mm-hmm. And he just was very anti putting his face out there. He didn't really get it. And after talking to him and getting to know him, I was like, you don't care about being seen as a, famous tech CEO. You care about the world. You care about the future. You care about how transportation is going to affect civilizations across the planet. Like, that's a message that we can really get behind and blow out. And so once he kind of saw that we saw him in a way that was truly a thought leader and not an influencer, he really jumped on board. And so what we decided to do, and we tried a whole bunch of ways to support him through content, ghostwriting, rail tech, AI, big data was challenging. So we were like, why don't we just get him on camera and ask him some questions? Because whenever we talked to him, he came alive talking about all of the above. And so we ended up architecting a series called Driving Disruption. And It's now on its 5th season on LinkedIn. And he has blown up his LinkedIn platform, and he is recognized globally. He's been stopped globally. Like, when we were about a year and a half into working with him, this was pre-pandemic, but he's one of our longest clients. He was in Belgium at a conference and people came up to him and recognized him from his LinkedIn videos.
Amazing.
And the beautiful thing, yeah. And this kind of goes back to your last question, Dan, around like Insta likes and, wanting it. We live in a world right now where like really the riches, and this is probably a marketing term some of you might have heard, but the riches really are in the niches. And the more niche and specific and focused and narrow you are on an audience and your message and your positioning, the better it works. And so for someone like Larry, who is reaching rail tech executives, which globally is about 100 people, like the decision makers.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to have this massive platform, although we've helped him grow it, but he's used his platform now as a vehicle to leverage and open doors into key conversations that he couldn't do before he started working with us. So I love that story because it's really made an impact on his business and his community and his industry too.
Yeah, it's when I'm building, websites that, somebody like yourself or anybody else. I mean, if they really do have a niche, I will say, hey, you might even want to consider adding on maybe some kind of e-learning element to this because, you might not get, 1,000 subscribers or anything like that, but you do really position yourself as an authority. And it is a way to showcase your light, to show that you really are about this. So I totally get that. Well, I remember way back when, I don't even remember what the exact subject was, but I was listening to some NPR thing and they were talking about the future of tech and all this stuff. And they said the future, because, it's such a saturated market, the people that will be successful are the geeks who speak. Right. And I really internalized that message. There's just that one little phrase. I was like, okay, so I guess there's a lot of folks out there, in my space that are, I guess, really introverted and, got their nose down. So stand out and just speak up. And I think what you're doing, it perfectly showcases that it's all about putting yourself out there, being yourself and showing people what you're about. All right. So moving right along, let's see here. Let's see what I got.
Dan, can I just actually respond to what you just said?
Please, let's do this.
I think it's really a very important point. I wouldn't say most people, I don't want to generalize, but we are, I think, humble by nature, right? We don't want to be self-aggrandizing. We don't want to come off overly full of ourselves.
Yep.
And there's a sort of like spectrum, right? Of like overconfidence and like over humility. And I think to play this game and to be seen in the world, we have to sort of find our balance because owning our greatness is like the scary part. I say this in my book, like I can teach you how to build a website and an Instagram strategy in 2 hours, but I can't tell you how worthy you are. You can find that. And
yes,
not to wax too spiritual, but that's just my vibe. I don't think that we're put here, like I said before, by accident. No one is you. No one has your unique gifts or DNA. You literally are one of a kind, 1 in 8 billion. And so when you don't show up and be of service or let yourself be seen or allow, your gifts to shine, you use the word light, you are literally doing the world a disservice. Like you're not just like disappointing potentially the people you touch, but like your own very reason for being. And
Absolutely.
So I say this in my last page of my last book or of my book, not to spoil it, because hopefully you'll all go read it. But the last page, it says, being your brand is not only your greatest opportunity, because it is, but your greatest responsibility. And I really believe everybody, the geeks who speak to like, the shiniest, sparkliest people you see and everyone in between, I think we're all just trying to ultimately figure that out. And I think it's like one of the most worthy journeys you can possibly take in life. So I just wanted to reflect that back because we're really aligned. When you said that, it spoke to me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's what aren't you bringing to the world that you should be,
Correct.
It's your responsibility. I like that. can you give an example? I'm sorry, excuse me. How do you ensure that a personal brand aligns with an individual's values and beliefs?
It has to. I mean, how do we ensure it? First of all, that's where we start. When we take clients through our method, we have a set of questions that we've, finessed over the last 6-7 years running the agency that really get to the core of that right away. So yes, we're going to talk about business objectives, and we're going to talk about who's your target audience, and we study competitive landscape, and we audit your social media, and we do all the things that need to be done to create platforms that scale and get seen. But we don't start there. We start with who are you? Why are you? Tell us your greatest failures. Tell us your biggest fears, your greatest accomplishments. What keeps you up at night? Why do you think you were born? We go there so that we get to know the heart of a person. I mean, the point of a brand is to create an emotional affinity upon itself. The keyword is emotional, right? Like when you think of like BMW versus Honda, or Four Seasons versus Holiday Inn, like there's a subtle emotional feeling we have inside of our minds and bodies. People have the ability to do that at like amplified, because we are walking, breathing emotional creatures being received by emotional creatures. So we have to start with integrity, authenticity, values. It's the core of the messages that we build. And I often say that branding is the art, right? And the strategy is the science. The branding is the what, and the strategy is how you say it and where. And so in order to really cut through and have it seen and heard strategically, it has to start with that heart-centered, value-driven message.
So when you're getting started, you're kind of like identifying boundaries and, I guess doing a lot of the discovery with the person and seeing like where some of their hangups might be, Yep. Okay.
Discovery is the key word. We actually call them discovery calls, right? And we use it just simply to discover who our clients are, because we can look them up and see what they do. But we really truly spend time getting to know our clients at a human level, and that includes their values.
I got a question in the chat here.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have any stories or advice for small to mid-sized companies versus Fortune 500?
Advice regarding building your personal brand. I think the standard is truly the same. Okay. For a small business, I think every single company, regardless of its size, can benefit from having a thought leadership as a part of its marketing strategy.
Yes.
People do business with people, like I said. And so the number one most clicked page on any and every website is the About section. We want to go and see, who are we working with? Who are the people? What's the team? Yeah. And so I don't know the details of the person who asked the question, but like, who is on your leadership team? Are you the founder? How can you be telling your story more consistently to the market? No one can tell a story like a founder. I say that all the time. And are you maximizing a social channel? I don't believe in needing to be on every single channel today. It's fruitless. But if your industry is, where LinkedIn plays, be consistent on LinkedIn and show up and show yourself. Right if on. It's Instagram, because of the industry, be consistent there. I'm sort of thinking one of our clients was, he's a Fortune 500 exec and of a very large food company. And he, massive TED Talk, like the whole thing. And the point I'm making to you, the person who asked this question, was the same I made to him. It's like, you have to be consistent. You have to show up, share yourself, add value, make sure that your messaging is conjoined with the corporate messaging, so that it doesn't feel like it's in two universes, but that it's talking to each other and enhancing each other. But no one can not benefit from doing this work.
Absolutely. I see it with Network in Action. When we started back in 2014, they had me whip up a logo, and I'm not a graphic designer at all. It was hideous, but that is not my aptitude. I have other aptitudes. But the whole journey of becoming what we are today, a lot of that was, obviously points of differentiation, but not just that. Actually knowing, who we are and what makes us different, what makes us special. And I could see that applying, even though this was, on an organizational level. You could bring that to, somebody as just for personal growth. It doesn't even need to be, a business thing. So yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. I mean, I'm in, I'm half tempted to workshop somebody in the chats here or in the group, but we're not going to do that unless anybody wants to volunteer themselves. I'll keep an eye out. Let me see here. All right. How do you approach building a personal brand for someone who is transitioning into a new career or industry?
We get this question all the time, like people who are pivoting, especially because of what's going on in the last year with the economy and all these layoffs. I mean, this has been a big point of conversation with us at the agency. And, this is sort of what I said earlier, like you will not always be the director of marketing at X or the, senior consultant at Watch. Like you're going to change jobs. You're going to go from company to company. You're going to start different companies if you're an entrepreneur, potentially. Very, very few people are in the same company for like 40 years today. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So really building the equity, the asset called you is primary. And a great exercise that I would encourage if you're thinking about this is a great exercise for anyone really, but there were things that you did at that job that were completely unique to you because again, no one is you, and people might have filled that role. Different people might have filled the same role, but what did you uniquely bring to it that no one else ever did or could? And like really asking yourself that question, really pinpointing again the value of you. Another great exercise, if you have a hard time kind of putting a mirror up and having that conversation with yourself, because again, we're humble, we're not self-aggrandizing. It's hard to say how awesome you are. There's an exercise in my book. It's the first exercise. And it's called, What is my unique intrinsic value? And I have the reader, and we actually do this with our clients as well, ask about 3 to 5 people, ideally a mix of personal and professional relationships. And if this is somebody who's pivoting, I would ask somebody that you worked with at your previous company this same question. What is my unique intrinsic value? If that's the question. It's meant to be a bit esoteric, and it's meant to make your friends and family and colleagues think. What is the thing that you do and the way you do it that no one else can do? Like the extracted essence and value of you based on the fact that you live and breathe. And ask a mentor, ask a client, ask a colleague, ask a friend, ask a partner, ask a sibling, depends on how you mesh with your family, whatever. But you use all of that as it's true. Don't ask your mom or dad if that's going to be a trigger, right?
Don't ask your ex.
Don't ask your ex. Yeah. Surely. But you want to take all of that information in written form. You want everyone to write it down back to you. This exercise, and I'm not exaggerating, I've seen like change people's lives because it's so beautiful. Typically what people get back. I would never say that about myself. You think that way? I bring that to the table. That's what makes me special. Mm-hmm. Or people are like super affirmed by it. And they're like, oh my God, this is so consistent. And why am I not saying this more? Right. Yeah. It's really fascinating. And so to the question, Daniel, because it's such a good one, is you want to take all of that and you want to extract it. And that's sort of the next exercise in the book. It's the personal brand hologram, and put it into a message that should be company agnostic. It should be uniquely you. And obviously, you're working in a job that you are maybe a subject matter expert in, it's your domain, and it will be forever, say, technology, or maybe you're really amplifying what a great leader you are. And you were a leader in this previous company and you're going to lead again. So you can use those as through lines, but the pivot is actually a really incredible opportunity to build a brand, to think about who you are independent of a job. Because again, you're always going to be you. And that is the number one asset you will take with you for the rest of your career. It's invaluable and it's endlessly leverageable.
So if I were to do that exercise, right, I'm sure I'd get a lot of feedback that, it would be on a spectrum, as it would for a lot of us. It might not all be good. All right. How would you take maybe some of the more negative stuff, or maybe something that you didn't know about yourself that other people identify with you, and not necessarily spin it, but let's say I had a reputation as a hard ass. That Daniello is a hard ass, would you say, hey, maybe you should work on that? Or, hey, maybe you should own that, internalize it? Like, how do you deal with things like that?
So a couple things. First of all, if you ask 3 to 5 people who you trust the most, who love you and care about you, you're only going to get positive feedback unless you ask explicitly. Please tell me my blind spots, which is actually a beautiful exercise and could even be a compliment to that work, that exercise. But I will say this: I believe that your business, your career, your financial state, it will only grow. This is my philosophy, to the extent in which you grow as a person. Like, my first business was a financial failure, and there was a lot of reasons why. And part of it was because I wasn't doing any of my own personal work. Mm-hmm. And then I started to do my own personal work and really look at the mess that I had created in my side of the street, if you will, and started to really unpack a lot of, old stuff. And not saying I'm perfectly healed, but I've been on the path of really doing my own work for a long time. And as a result, my business expanded financially in a way that I never could have predicted. And so I think it's a beautiful question. And I think it's one that we have to lean into and know where our blind spots are, where we have to work, like seeking honest feedback from people who trust you or who you trust. Or I always take it with a grain of salt when someone gives me harsh feedback that doesn't have my highest interest at heart. Yeah. Like a coach or a therapist or a mentor or a good colleague. And that is an amazing journey towards authenticity is what you're talking about. And that is something we should all strive to see more of in ourselves, the stuff particularly that we're not proud of, so that we can integrate it and work on it and own it, so that it's not a blind spot. Might be a habit or a personality trait that we can't totally change, but at least we're not unconscious of it. Yeah. And that way we can get ahead of it, and we can be more accountable and more responsible in the way that we show up in the world.
Kind of harkens to this, I forget who it was, some Eastern philosopher or, but they had 4 quadrants, and I believe the book was called How to See Yourself as You Truly Are. And there was 4 quadrants, right? And it was what you know about yourself, but other people don't know about you, what other people know about you, but you don't know about you. And they broke it down into, I think you should check that out. And I think I should revisit that, because I think it definitely speaks to this here. I do know the title was How to See Yourself as You Truly Are, but I don't know who wrote it. I'm sorry?
I said, I feel like I've heard of that book too. I should check that out. That's right up my alley.
It's in the, it's a classic, not necessarily classic, but it's in the archives. I'll give you that. We do have a bunch of questions popping off in the chat, so I'm going to read off some here. So from Prem, why should somebody be consistent on social media given that they identify as an introvert?
Awesome question, Prem. I mean, consistency, it depends on your goals, right? So are you looking to use social media for a specific objective, i.e. grow a network, get a new job, grow influence, right? There are a million reasons we can use social media. And consistency is really I say in my book that clarity is king. There's an old marketing adage. We used to say content is king. I believe that's outdated. Clarity is king. We have to know our razor sharp, crystal clear brand value and message to cut through the noise. I said that before, but consistency is queen. And the way that you win online today, the way that you win, I think, in anything really in life and your health, your relationships, is consistency, like showing up and putting in the work and letting it compound. And if you look at some of the biggest, not that I'm asking you to go compare yourself, Prem, to these folks, but there are major platforms, right? And thought leaders and experts and people who are kind of household names within their own spaces. It's not that they're better than anybody else. We're all just as like smart as the next person. We're all just trying to figure it out as we go. I believe that. The people who like win in the game of at least social are the ones that just don't quit, that are consistent, that show up all the time.
Yes.
And that's really the crux. Like if that's like the sauce to succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd have to ask yourself, why should you be consistent? Because you'll grow, but what are you growing towards and why? And that's really a question I would reflect back to you.
One person on my timeline that I always see, Jennifer Johnson is one of our franchisees. And I cannot get on Facebook without seeing her talking head, and she is ever present and she's very good at it. And so I know like, this is what she's about, I mean, I'm sure most of us could identify somebody just like that, in our lives that you may not be interacting with all the time, but you just know what they're about, and that they would be the go-to,
Yep.
And it's invaluable. Definitely putting yourself out there consistently, specifically.
And also, you just speak to a really good point. Like we say this in our proposals when we talk to our clients, it's like being top of mind, staying top of mind is like such a business advantage, right? And we have all of these clients that come to us and they're like, how do I really stand out and cut through the noise? And yes, it's that clarity piece that I've mentioned, but I think there's like a psychology stat on like the psychology of marketing, and that it takes like 7 touch points for someone to like click buy or press, follow or whatever, or refer or call. I think that's gone up to like 14 because of the duration of the internet right now. And so the power of consistency keeps you top of mind. So when someone's like, oh, I think I want to work on my personal brand. Like, who's that girl in the yellow I see all the time? Or like someone says to you, my friend wants, I'm looking for a personal branding, and that person's not following me, but someone else is. Well, I follow this girl, Jessica, and you should go check her LinkedIn out. Like, you never know where it's going to come from. Yeah. And consistency just puts your odds of getting seen much, much higher.
Would you say that it's a bit laborsome? Because sometimes I look at like the people that are ultra consistent and I'm like, how do they have the energy, to constantly be putting themselves out there?
That's why we have a business, Dan.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It does take time, but I know plenty of people who don't have a team like us and don't have hired or outsourced it. And it's a matter, I think, of, commitment, passion, clarity, inspiration. Okay. Having all of those things at your fingertips will keep you motivated, but sometimes you need an accountability partner and you need somebody to ghostwrite your content for you, and that's okay. And, it's why we have a business.
1,000%. Another question in the chat. This one's from Simon. Question: when building a personal brand, how does one deal with having 2 distinct audiences because of having 2 businesses that serve different audiences?
Simon, that's a good question. And I would want to dig in more to your businesses and your platforms in order to like accurately personally answer that. I will say broadly, like more on the macro, it's challenging when we're not like, when we have like kind of splintered intentions, we get splintered results. Someone once said that to me and I never forgot that. So generally speaking, I would say like, find your lane and, integrating you like at the core. Maybe you're the kind of connective tissue between both. Like, how can you elevate you and create one solid audience that sort of markets against both and sends people to both in a strategic way? That could be something for you to think about. That way, maybe the companies themselves have their own unique channels and messaging and strategies and audiences, which they should. They're 2 different companies, but you're the founder of both. So what are those overlap messages that you can put into your own personal platform? And then I would also, the question is when building a personal brand. So I say like, you're the umbrella, like the umbrella brand effect, like you're the top and you have all these things underneath you that you do. A lot of our clients are in the same boat and they come to us and we help to really establish how do we elevate them in a way that serves it all. And I would just really ask yourself, like, what is the overlap between both of these two companies? Why did you start them? Why are these industries exciting to you? Why do you think they're both needed in the world? What problems are you solving? What are the similarities? Really, really dig into that piece of the brand platform, which is you, and ask yourself some bigger questions. And at the very least, stay the course. If you have this audience over here with this website and LinkedIn, run that through the pipes and make that super robust. And then if you have something else over here with a different social, sounds like they're both equally important to you. So I would give them all kind of that strategic consideration.
Okay. And how do you help people differentiate themselves between the competition, from the competition?
So I have another chapter in my book. It's right here. And it's called It's All Been Said Before. Because the truth is, it's very, very challenging to come up with brand new, one of a kind thought leadership ideas, although that's really the challenge, right? And what I think we're all striving to do, which is a beautiful thing. But actually, the chapter is called It's All Been Said Before. But the last line of that chapter says, but no one has said it like you. And so I actually think that competition is got a bad rap. I think that word has a negative charge, and that we should look at competition as inspiration. And part of what I teach in the book is a competitive analysis and how to really do a quantitative analysis and a qualitative analysis, and how to look at distinctive aspects about people's choices in message and color and font and audience and kind of key pinnacle content choices, podcast versus newsletter versus YouTube versus TikTok, and then quantifying, like, where's the reach and how are these competitors doing things that work really well, and what are things they probably aren't doing and could improve upon. And that's what we call the white space. Really, like when your competitors zig, you zag. And that's how you pierce through. And that requires a bit of diligent study and analysis and research. And so I walk in through the reader and, anyone who listens to the audiobook, how to actually do that and how to create true competitive analysis tools so that you can really define a strategy that helps you stand out.
Okay. I have one more question for you. Then I'm going to let some of our audience take it from there. See if there's any more Q&A. So my question for you is, how would you describe your personal brand?
I love this question. Well, I also have that in my book too. No, I won't. I'll just speak from my heart. I think my personal brand is women empowered. It's here to create positive energy in the world. It's here to remind people of their authenticity as their superpower, to be unapologetic in my spiritual beliefs. And so, which is inclusive and agnostic in its own way, that everyone's here for a reason. And, that it's not above anybody, that I'm taking people with me and reminding everyone that we're all in this together and figuring it out. And setting an example, honestly, of what's possible when you believe in yourself, because I am a fake it till you make it case study. And I've had a lot of failure in my life and a lot of insecurity, and I've overcome it. And not because I'm special, but because I just decided. And I want other people to know that lives inside of them too. So I hope that's clear.
Well, no, I'll tell you this. I dig your vibe and I dig your message, and I think you're doing it great. So with that, I do want to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions that they like to ask Jessica? You could feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I'll cue you up. What you got, people? All right, Joyce, hit me. Oh, I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, I know. First off, fascinating information, and we've been talking about personal brand, my wife and I, for like the past 6 months or so. The question I have for you, you kind of touched on it a little bit through some of the questions that Danilo asked. The one I'm interested in is can you give an example of kind of like what the how do you quantify the ROI on, connecting with a client, from beginning and then at the end. And so they can kind of see a quantified real ROI from this, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so our flagship program at the agency is called the Thought Leader Program. It's a 13-month engagement. And in that engagement, it's really only in those longer term partnerships that we do tons of projects, but those that really are coming to invest and are expecting that ROI, of course, need a roadmap and that consistency, right, over time to see that return. And so in the very beginning of that partnership, at the upfront of that 13-month engagement, we sit down with the client and map out a quarterly strategy of KPIs and milestones that we track every single month with the client to ensure that we're getting them. And we like I said, we co-create that. Is it a certain amount of press hits? Is it a certain amount of DMs you're looking for on LinkedIn? Is it to recruit top tier talent? Is it to grow your business through, new prospecting and clients? We help identify what those KPIs and milestones need to be. Is it getting a book deal? Is it getting asked to speak on stage? Every single person is different. And that strategy is actually revisited every quarter so that we can adjust the actions based on what we're seeing working the most, so that it really becomes somewhat of like a business plan in tandem with like a marketing plan. And every client is, like I said, different. We've got this one client right now, the software defense company, and we're elevating the CRO and the COO, and they both have sort of two different objectives. So the COO is really, she's a woman. She's one of the only women in defense tech. And a huge objective was they just raised $40 million and have to do this huge hiring spree. And she's amazing. And so we're like, let's put her out there to show culture and demonstrate the executive leadership. And we're really going hard on LinkedIn and showing her humanity and showing that she's a mom and that she's work-life balance and that she's an expert in tech and all of the things. And she's getting blown up by the media. Podcasts are calling her, wanting to interview her, which spreads her message more far and wide. She's getting tons of DMs. We're tracking all of that, analytically, so that we're really able to demonstrate to the client, like, here's the value and here's the ROI in qualitative and quantitative terms.
So as a follow-up to that, can you give a ballpark in terms of an average ROI in terms of percentage or X return, a 2X return on their investment, or is it a 10X return? Or just, I know that it's going to be different for every person and depending on what they're doing, but, ballpark figures just to kind of give us a flavor.
It ranges. I would say, 2X to 10X sounds right. We have, it's ROI in revenue and opportunity, but I think the development of platform and influence and reputation is invaluable. So it's hard to sometimes, I would say it's 100X when I look at the clients that we've taken from sort of obscurity to recognized industry thought leaders. You can't put a price tag on that, in my view. But many of our clients have been with us now for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And they keep investing in us because they see that ROI.
Awesome. Thanks.
I can tell you that David and Joyce, they actually had an interesting hurdle at the beginning of their franchise with the name of their franchise, the Cougar Connection, and people had the wrong impression. And this, it was an exercise, but I think your brand is clear today.
Well, we continue to leverage it. The Cougars come from the University of Houston. We're an alumni supporting kind of collegiate group for NIA. And so the University of Houston's mascot is a cougar. And so all the alumni are called Cougars. And I went to Texas A&M, so all I can do is say I married a cougar, and we kind of leverage that, so.
I just want to call out one quick thing before you jump. That Nora Shepard, who's my co-founder and head of business development here, she's on the line. She just said it's really a brilliant and super accurate point. Another outcome of our work is that we shorten the sales cycle. So personal branding is a super boost to your awareness, the awareness stage of how people find you, to interest and education, because they've already created a relationship with you by the content you're sharing. So by the time they call you, they're more inclined to make a decision and purchase because you've earned their trust. And that has become a really beautiful telltale of our work becoming effective because our clients are seeing that sales cycle completely shortened based on personal branding.
All right.
Yeah.
We have a hand up from Miss Jessica Min. Jessica, what you got? And make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay, sure. Daniela, I really appreciate your encouragement, but also I'm very encouraged by another Jessica. You are just really amazing. I have to say, you are very authentic, and your story really inspiring. But I just want to, appreciate your expertise that you shared. So now my situation is that for social media, I'm almost non-existing.
Yeah.
Because I have not posted for quite many years, even though I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and even Instagram. But it's just I have not done much. So what would you recommend a business owner? I'm a business owner like myself to improve my social presence. And thank you.
Of course. So what's your business?
So we help people, coach people, and on the financial side.
Cool. Great. So I would, given your industry and given just, the opportunity, the platform of LinkedIn is really powerful. I wouldn't concern yourself with Instagram or Facebook at this time. If you're pretty much non-existent and you're wanting to kind of start somewhere, I would recommend that you would go narrow and deep versus shallow and wide on social. And so LinkedIn is incredibly exciting. So I'm part of the Global Content Creators Program. So I work with LinkedIn like proper. They're a partner to me and to my agency. And that organization is doubling down on content creators. So we use LinkedIn to social network. We find jobs, we find talent, right? It's like a recruiting platform in many ways. At least that's what people think it is. Or we consume content. We're in the feed and we're scrolling and we see articles, et cetera. But content creators are really being prioritized on that channel right now. They want individuals, personal profiles, not companies, but people, to be getting out there and sharing education and knowledge and value. And it's not something that it's starting to grow. I shouldn't say that it's not a lot of people. There's quite a few people on LinkedIn that have become kind of hip to this and know this, but not everyone. And so the way to sort of get seen and pierce through on LinkedIn is much easier than say on Instagram or Facebook today. And it's also your lane, Jessica, you're in finance. Like it's a B2B business driven platform. You don't need to be on TikTok or Pinterest. Like LinkedIn is your ecosystem. And so at the very least, I would encourage you to update your profile and optimize it so that like you have a picture, you have a cover photo, you have a strong headline, you have a strong bio. The number one activity on LinkedIn is looking at other people's profiles. That's what we do. We just go and stalk, not even scrolling in the feed or creating content, but just looking at other people's profiles. That's the number one thing people do on that channel. So I want you to think of your LinkedIn profile as your own sort of personal secondary website, because it also really powerful and fun fact about LinkedIn is that Google and LinkedIn are like this. They're like besties. And it has tremendous SEO power, search engine optimization. So the chances of your LinkedIn profile coming up on page 1 of Google when people search your name is extremely high. So you want to optimize that page to tell a story that you want people to see in the world. That would be like winning, in my view, if you were to do that as a first step. If you really wanted to take it to the next step, I would start to post 2 to 3 times a week and share value. What articles are you reading? Maybe you see someone else's content that you love and just reshare it. That counts as a post. Maybe if you feel so inclined, maybe tell a personal story about a client success win that you're proud of. It's professional, personal, human networking on LinkedIn. They want you to be a real person. They don't want you to put like a 2-dimensional and just be your business persona. They want you to be yourself. It's a really what LinkedIn is emphasizing. And maybe, Nora, if you're still on the line, if you can find Charlie Safro's LinkedIn and just like drop it in the chat. So Charlie Safro is a friend of mine, a former client, and is one of my favorite women to follow on LinkedIn. She just crushes it on yes, content creation and her consistency. But also, I don't know if Nora's still here. Maybe I can find it.
Nora's here. I see her.
Oh, great. Just if you want to drop that in when you get a second, no. But she's just so authentic. Like she strikes the perfect balance between like being an executive leader and adding value to her clients. She's in recruiting. And she's like in logistics of all industries. So it's very masculine, very like, like lots of truckers and supply chain, all the things. She shows up just very much herself, and she actually earns more credibility because of it. So I hope this was a lot of information, but I would encourage you to go on that channel.
That's wonderful. Jessica, just continue. You talk about you recommended 2 to 3 times posting, and are there any like a day or hours that would be a good ones to post?
Such a good question. I mean, it changes. There's a couple different philosophies around it, but I would say I try to avoid Mondays. Like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays are like hot days. Typically like midday, like 11 to 2. But I've also seen people win in like Sunday night at 7 p.m., when there's not a lot of saturation on the platform, when it's a little quieter, which gives you the opportunity to like boost and stand out. But I would play with that. I would really kind of test and experiment. 2 to 3 days a week can really vary. I try and stay in the Monday through Friday work week, and just make sure that I hit it kind of midday.
Yeah. And one last thing is that maybe you can post your contact info with us. I don't know what's your fee, but I definitely totally agree with you and why you're not accepting the other financial advisor. And because that's the reason that I don't believe it's always being provided value. It's just like Mr. Ziegler said, you give others what they want, you get what you want, right? So really appreciate you, Jessica. And thank you, Daniela, allowing me to ask the questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Such a great time. And I just want to say really quickly to Jessica's question, if you are interested in working with SimplyBe, please email Nora at simplybeagency.com. She's actually on the line right now, or at least she was in the waiting room.
But all right, it looks like she's back in now.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's in twice.
Yeah, I think she's probably on her phone or whatever, but if we'd love to hear from you. And obviously we love supporting everyone we can that needs our help. And Nora is incredible. She was silent listening to me all afternoon with all of you, but she could sit up on the seat and talk just as much and brilliantly. So she's incredible. So if you are interested, just email Nora.
I have an embarrassing question.
Sure.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Oh my gosh, not embarrassing. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
Zweig. It's
Zweig.
a sharp I. Zweig. It's German.
All right.
Zweig.
Well, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Zweig? All right. Patricia. Make sure you unmute yourself there, Patricia.
Sorry. Yes, I clicked on it a couple of times. It didn't unmute. Hi, Jessica. Thank you. I had put a question in the chat, and I'll just read it. It says, "You seem like a very nice, insightful person who would serve your client with care." I feel like I have some of those same qualities. And I guess my question to you is, number one, how do you share that with people without coming across like you're bragging? How you were saying a minute ago, let people know, after you ask people, how would they describe you? Let people know. Well, how do you do that without coming across as bragging? And then also, how do you share those kinds of things without people thinking that you're too nice and that you wouldn't be, tough enough to be successful in some maybe hard negotiations?
I love this question, Patricia. I have lots to say. We only have a few minutes. The first point, I'm looking at your question. So how do you share your kindness, your value, your pure intentions, if you will, without coming across like you're bragging?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is it's a point of resonance. It's about resonance, right? So are you coming from a place of your heart? Can people feel you? People will feel you before they read you or hear you. And I think when we get into alignment with like the truth and the intention of, our hearts, people can feel that. And if you're genuine in that, it's not going to come off bragging. And if people think that it is, that's not your problem. That's theirs. That's a projection. Okay. And I've really had to get over thinking and fearing so much about what people think of me. Because I know who I am, just like I'm sure you know who you are. Mm-hmm. And when you come from that place of truth and sincerity and integrity, like people can't mess with that. And if they want to project an opinion, again, that's none of your business. And that's been a practice that I've worked on, because when you put yourself out there and you're seen in the light, people are going to throw shade. Moths are attracted to the flame, and that's just like human nature. And so you just have to sort of accept that and focus on being of service to the people that can feel you and get you. Okay. And so that's number one. And I think the second question, Nora's on the call. She's probably maybe laughing. I can be a bee. Okay. Like I can be, I'm a businesswoman, right? And I have boundaries, and I have been able to, make moves and put out fires and make hard decisions and all of the things that come with being a business owner and a business person. This is going to sound kind of cliche, but it's really true. I saw, Beyonce had a documentary that came out many years ago, and Beyonce's like not just an artist, she's like the CEO of her world. She's incredible. Right. And she was talking about how she gives feedback to her performers, like her team, like she makes her ensemble watch their performances every night after a concert, and she critiques them all, and like they improve the next show and the next show and the next show. It's pretty fascinating. And she said in that documentary, I'll never forget it, she's like, you can be firm, but you must be kind. And I never forgot that. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't think I'm too nice at all. I think I'm kind, and there's a difference. But I'm not afraid to, I think it comes from knowing your value and knowing your values and, knowing your boundaries, protecting your people. Sure. I've let go of clients because they haven't, been kind to my team, or I've blocked people because they're not kind on social media. I've had to, lawyer up when people don't pay me. Right. There's been moments of it all. So you find the muscle of, tenacity, I guess, but you should never lose, your integrity along the way. Sure. That's really what it's about.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I think my second part to that question was coming from a posting standpoint. When you're posting and you're giving information, you're giving tips. So I'm a realtor. So I may post about clients buying or selling their homes, or I may post a tip for buyers or sellers, or, thank you to a certain buyer, thank you to a certain seller. And so I guess that was my point to the second part of the question. I can be tough when I need to be tough and not be rude about it. But as far as it comes across on social media, where people are, I don't know, I guess maybe it just takes them seeing you enough to kind of get to know you.
Yeah, I get I think I get what you're asking. And let me just give you one more point of view. I don't know if you've ever heard of, there's a guy that I follow. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's kind of like a famous social media guy. And he wrote a book many years ago that's like kind of become the bedrock of my philosophy on this entire space, which is called jab, 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 right hook. And the jabs are intended to be metaphors for the give, like give value, give education, give entertainment, give it for free. Just show up for your audience and create value so that they build a relationship with you. And then the hook is your ask. It's not your sell, it's your ask. So by the time you've jabbed them enough with so much value, and you have an opportunity to like sell them a house or open a house and have them come work with you or sign up for your email list, any ask is a hook, big or small. You have earned their trust and they know that you're legit. and they know you're the real thing. And so the chances of them trying to like take advantage gets diminished because you've already served them so much value that they consciously kind of want to pay it forward or like thank you for it, right? By engaging with you. So if you are just thinking about social media, just make sure that everything you post feels like a jab, feels like value add to your community.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Love the question.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Jessica, I got to say, we are coming up on our time. This was really great. And I really do thank you for the new format that we were able to try out today. I think it was a success. All right.
I think so. Thank you for rolling with it. You were wonderful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This was great. This was really great. And I could definitely tell that you've already provided a lot of value for the people here. I can see you got some book sales in the chat. So that's pretty cool. All right. Well, but before I let you go, are there any parting words, any thoughts, or anything that you feel necessary to convey at this juncture? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I just first and foremost want to say thank you to Shannon McGee for having me, for finding me at that. We connected heart to heart at that event in Nashville, and you were like, I'm going to get you into this group, and you did. And thank you for this. This was a beautiful, beautiful way to spend my afternoon. You're all an incredible group of people. I could feel it. And don't be a stranger. Come find me, come find Nora on LinkedIn. Send a note to Nora if you're interested in learning more about SimplyBe, pick up my book. And most of all, just, not to be cheesy, but just remember how needed you are. It's not an option to be yourself and to share it. It's a responsibility.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Zweig, thank you very much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And I'll see you all soon. Hopefully talk to you soon. Stay
Cheers.
connected. Bye.